What if Deku had Salem's powers? Chapter 2. Magic and Grimm. It was early in the morning, and Izuku was down at Dagobah Municipal Beach Park. It was a beach that was covered in rubbish due to the ocean currents and people illegally dumping. Why are we here? Salem asked. Because this is the perfect place to practice with your powers, Izuku said. And how is a beach covered in rubbish the perfect place? Salem asked. Because no one comes around here, so there's little chance of being caught, Deku said. Right. Your world's law prohibits those with quirks from using them without a license, or under certain circumstances. But my powers are not a quirk, Salem said. I doubt that the heroes and police would believe that. There's really no difference between your magic and quirks, except for the toll on the boy quirks take, Izuku said. I've been wondering. Where did quirks come from? Salem asked. No one really knows. There are many different theories. All we know is that one day a baby that emitted light was born, and then quirks started to become more and more common, Izuku said. The opposite to magic in my world. Everyone could use it, until the gods killed everyone. Only leaving me and Ozpin the only magic users, Salem said. So, how do I use magic? Izuku asked. The basics of magic are very simple. You just need to think about what you want to do. If you want to create a fireball, then just think about creating a fireball, Salem said. It's that simple? Izuku asked. Essentially, yes. Thought for beginners, it helps to have an incantation. A word or phrase that will help set your mind into creating what you want. The incantation can be as simple as just saying fire. So, try that, Salem said. Okay, Izuku said. Izuku then aimed his hand at a pile of rubbish. Fire, Izuku said, but nothing happened. Fire, Izuku said, but again, nothing happened. Fire, Izuku yelled, but yet again, nothing happened. What's wrong? Why can't I use your magic? Izuku asked. I don't know. I don't have an instruction manual here, Salem said. Well, that's just great. I thought I had a chance of becoming a hero. But I'm just stuck with an old witch stuck in my head, Izuku said, getting angrier. Salem noticed that, as Izuku got angrier, his hair began to go from green to white. That's it, Salem said. What's it? Izuku asked. Negative emotions, Salem said. What? Izuku asked. When I saved you from that villain, your body's skin, hair and eye color changed to look like me. I was freely able to use magic when you were in that form. And just right, as you got angry, your hair went white, Salem said. Your point being? Izuku asked. Your hair going white without my influence shows that you have my powers. You just need to be in that form. You need to think of everything negative in your life. Everything that makes you angry, makes you cry, makes you fall into despair, Salem said. I see. I'll give it a try, Izuku said. Izuku thought on everything negative in his life. The injustice from being born quirkless, being looked down upon and bullied. Izuku's body then began to change colors, but then they returned to normal. What happened? You were doing it, Salem said. I just couldn't. I just couldn't hold on to those negative emotions. I'm not that type of person, Izuku said. Izuku. You're a good kid, but the world doesn't care about that. You need to let those emotions take over if you're ever going to use my powers. You do want to be a hero, right? Salem said. Yes, Izuku said. Then you need to let go of forgiving, let the hate fester, Salem said. But that's not the mindset of a hero, Izuku said. Seems to be the mindset of Bakugo, Salem said. Wait, how do you know about Bakugo if you were only reincarnated into my body yesterday afternoon? Izuku said. I'm starting to gain access to your memories. I can see what he has done to you, and to me what he's doing isn't very hero-like. How come he gets the easy road to becoming a hero, whilst you had no access to any road at all? That doesn't seem fair, Salem said. Salem's words began to get to Izuku. You're right. It isn't fair, Izuku said, his body jing white and red. Izuku was now looking a lot like Salem. Congratulations, Izuku. You've done it, Salem said. Izuku opened his eyes to see his changed body. Izuku then looked at his reflection on a sheet of metal. So this is what you look like, Izuku said. Well done, Izuku, Salem said. Thanks, Izuku said. Izuku then reverted to normal. What? Why am I changing back, Izuku asked. It seems you need to keep those negative emotions in the forefront of your mind, for now at least, Salem said. Izuku then thought of negative emotion and his body changed to look like Salem once again. Fire, Izuku yelled. A blast of fire then left Izuku's hand. I did it. I mean finally. After all this time, I finally have the power I deserve, Izuku said. Salem smiled. Izuku and Salem then spent the rest of the day practicing keeping in his new form and casting basic magic. 6 months had now passed since they started training, and Salem felt that Izuku was ready to learn about her second set of powers. Alright, Izuku. Now it's time you learn about my other powers, Salem said. Other powers, Izuku asked. Yes. They are related to the reason why I look the way I do, Salem said. Oh. I've been wondering why you looked that way, but I didn't want to be rude. So you were fully human, or were you born like this, Izuku asked. I was born a human, but during my isolation of Remnant I went to the God of Darkness domain. There was a pool of full destruction and I let myself fall in an attempt to end my suffering. But it couldn't kill me, and so I ended up looking like this, Salem said. That's horrible. I can't imagine what you went through. I'm sorry, Izuku said. It's alright. It was millennia ago, Salem said. So, what is this other set of powers, Izuku asked. Creating and controlling creatures called Grimm, Salem said. Grimm, Izuku asked. Yes. They are creatures created by the God of Darkness, and just like to pool I jumped in, Salem said. So they all look similar to you, Izuku asked. Sort of. But they are more animalistic. Imagine a giant wolf, and that's what a beowulf is. These creatures will be under your control. They are very useful when dealing with a large number of enemies, while being immortal makes that threat null and void, but it's not painless, Salem said. I see. So how do I create these creatures, Izuku asked. You need to create a pool of darkness. Grimm spawn from these pools once they are created. They usually take a form suitable for the location they are created in. For instance, here a beowulf would spawn, whereas in a colder climate a saber would spawn, which is a saber-toothed tiger, Salem said. I see. So how do I create these pools of Grimm, Izuku asked. Just think about it, Salem said. You don't sound very confident, Izuku said. I'll be honest. I've never created a pool of Grimm. I can control a pool and dictate what Grimm emerge. The only other way pools are created is when a Grimm reaches a certain level of power. I've never needed to create a pool as there were always Grimm that could do that for me, Salem said. I see. So I'll have to figure it out on my own, Izuku said. Unfortunately, Salem said. Izuku then spent several months trying to create Grimm, but had no success. He instead decided to practice more with magic and studying for the written exam. Soon the day of the exam arrived. This is it. It's now or never, Izuku said. Indeed, it is. You better nor fail, you hear me? I didn't do all this for you, you know, Salem said. I know. You want justice for what the gods did to you, Izuku said. Well, let's go in, the Salem said. Right, Izuku said. Out of my way, Deku, Bakugo said. Kaken, Izuku said. Don't stand in front of me. I'll kill you, Bakugo said. Izuku moved out of the way. Morning. Let's do our best, Izuku said. Bakugo just walked past and was recognized by some examines. Why do you continue to let him walk over you? You have power now, Salem said. I know that, but I just can't. Anyways, he hasn't done anything to me since that day. A week after Izuku had started practicing with Salem's power, Bakugo had pinned him against a wall at the back of the school. You better not go to UA. They wouldn't let a weak quirkless loser like you in. You don't deserve it, Bakugo said. I do, Izuku said. What did you say, Bakugo asked. I said, I do, Izuku yelled, his eyes now red and black. Bakugo, back off. What the hell, Bakugo said. I have power now, and I will get into UA. I promise you that, Izuku said. What the fuck happened to you, Bakugo asked. I died, and got a quirk in my next life. Like you said I would. You pathetic excuse of a human being, Izuku said. Bakugo then walked off and never bothered Izuku again. Back to the present. Still, you need to stand up to him, Salem said. I know. I was just scared of him out of habit, Izuku said. But you different from before. Remember your last 10 months of training. Take your first step to becoming a hero with your head held high, Salem said. Right, Izuku said. Izuku then stepped forward but tripped over his own feet. Great start, Salem said, as Izuku fell. But before he hit the ground, he began to float. Ah, Izuku said. Are you alright, a brown-haired girl asked. Ah. What, Izuku said, freaking out a bit from being weightless. It's my quirk. Sorry for using it without asking first. But it'd be bad luck if you fell, right? Let's do our best. See ya, the girl said, setting Izuku down and releasing him. The girl then walked off. I talked to a girl, Izuku thought. More like a girl talked to you, Salem said. That's still more interaction I've had with a girl, Izuku said. Salem chuckled. Tell you what. Find a girl you like, and I'll help you bag her, Salem said. What, Izuku asked. Quit standing there. You've got an exam to get to, Salem said. Right, Izuku said. Izuku then entered UA to begin the written exam. After the written exam, the examines were then given the rundown of the practical exam. They were told about the different types of robots and Izuku was called out for muttering by a blue-haired boy. After the explanation, the examines were sent to exam sites. Mock battles, Izuku said. You can do this, Izuku. You have nothing to worry about, Salem said. Still, it's nerve-wracking, Izuku said. Izuku then noticed the brown-haired girl that stopped him falling. Oh, it's the person I met at the school gates. That nice person. She was assigned to the same battle center. I should go thank her, Izuku thought. Izuku began to walk over to her, but he was stopped when the blue-haired boy placed his hand on his shoulder. That girl appears to be trying to focus. What are you doing here? Are you taking the entrance exam to interfere with everyone else, the boy asked. No, of course not, Izuku said. The other examines began to gossip about Izuku. Okay, start, present Mick said. Hurry. Go. Timer wasting, Salem said. Izuku then took off. He managed to get a significant lead over other examines. Izuku then began to think of negative emotions, his body changing to his Grimm form. Izuku then came across some robots and destroyed them easily with magic. In a monitoring room, several teachers were watching over the examines. In this practical exam, the examines have not been informed of the number of villains or their locations. They have a limited amount of time in a vast area. They have to draw the villains out from there. Information gathering ability to understand the situation before anyone else, mobility that can be used in many different circumstances, discernment to be able to stay calm in any situation, and pure combat ability. These basic abilities needed to keep the peace in the streets are turned into points in this test, a small bipedal rodent said. One of the examiners was a tall-skinned, blonde-haired man. The man said, noticing Izuku. That boy. He looks familiar. But where have I seen him before, the man thought. Doesn't this year's group look promising, a teacher asked. Well, we can't know for sure yet. Their true test is still to come, another teacher said, pressing a button. All of a sudden, several explosions occurred in the area. A giant robot mock villain then arrived in the area. That's much bigger than I expected, Izuku said. You're telling me? It's as big as a wyvern, Salem said. What do, Izuku asked. Run, Salem yelled. Izuku began to run away from the 0-pointer. Our voice said. Izuku looked back to see that the brown-haired girl had her leg stuck under some rubble. Izuku then began to run back towards the girl. What are you doing, Salem asked. I don't know. My body just started moving, Izuku said. Well, you better move faster then. It's almost on top of her, Salem said. Izuku quickly reached the girl. He used wind magic to blast the rubble off the girl and then picked her up. He was about to run when he realized the robot was right on top of them. Use your quirk on yourself, Izuku said. What, the girl said. Izuku then threw the girl away. The girl activated her quick and floated away. Izuku then began to create a giant fireball and blasted the giant robot, creating a giant hole in the robot. The robot then began to fall towards Izuku. Get the hell out of there, Salem yelled. Izuku created a blast of fire to send him flying away. Izuku crashed to the ground, but he wasn't safe. The robot's head was about to land on him. Recipro burst, a voice yelled. A blur then flew past Izuku, and now the robot's head was floating. The blur quickly turned around and picked him up just before the robot's head crashing to the ground. The head of the robot caused the ground to break. They threw whoever was carrying him off balance and so they crashed to the ground. Once they had stopped, Izuku saw the brown-haired girl and the blue-haired boy were next to him. They had saved him. Izuku then saw that the girl was puking a lot and had seemed to have passed out. Izuku tended to the girl as the exam ended. The girl was then taken away, and after being checked over, Izuku was allowed to go home. The wait was agonizing, each day felt like an eternity waiting for his exam results. Salem assured him over and over that things would be alright. It had now been a week since the exam and Izuku was currently sitting on the sofa. Inko then frantically came in. Izuku. It's here. It came. It's here, Inko said, holding a letter from UA. Izuku took the letter into his room and opened it. A small device landed on his desk and then a hologram appeared. Hello Mr. Midoriya, I am Principal Nezu. I won't keep you in suspense for much longer, I'm sure the wait has been agonizing. I'm pleased to say that you've passed the written exam. Now for the practical exam. You achieved a total of 43 villain points, but that wasn't the only measure you were being scored on. There was a secret score of rescue points, and you achieved 30 rescue points, putting you at a grand total of 73 points, putting you in third place. Congratulations Izuku Midoriya, your Hero Academia awaits, Nezu said. Izuku began to cry. Well done kid. You made it, Salem said, feeling a sense of pride in her. Izuku then went to tell his mum the good news. End of chapter 2.